Welcome to Three is a Crowd. I'm Julie.
And I'm Terrence.
So, how does anyone decide to have another kid?
We're a couple debating this decision for ourselves and inviting you to listen in.
It's not weird.
It's a little bit weird.
Episode 2.
Yay!
We made it.
We're actually doing this thing.
We are indeed.
I think episode 2 is when you become a legitimate podcast.
2 for 2.
2 for 2.
So this is an episode, I guess, where I'm leading the conversation because it is the episode where I outline some of the pros, the sort of pro list as to why we should consider having a third child. We've just listened back to this audio that we recorded months ago.
Funny how things change.
And funny how things change.
Oh, how the turntables have... But yes, so this is a very positive episode where we look at all of the good things that child number 3 might bring into our family. Mm-hmm. It was a very difficult conversation for you because you were really on the chopping block. Like, you really had to defend your position with this episode.
And I realized I missed so many of my points.
That's my skill.
When I listened back, I was like, why didn't I say this and this and this? So
this is what happens when she looks.
It's an incomplete list.
This is what happens when Julie looks into my eyes. She forgets all the things she was going to say, and she gets lost.
Gosh, no. We want to have the third episode, Terrence. Let's not scare the people, the good people listening off.
Yes, but this is our pro list. Your pro list might be completely different,
or it could be similar,
or whatever it is. But again, this is what we think our experience of child number 3 might be like.
Mm-hmm. Recorded at a particular time in our lives.
It's a snapshot. Of what we were like 4 months ago.
Longer, yeah. So here it is, our pro list.
So in the last episode, we were worried that you were going to sound too much like a man because you were feeling sick. Mm-hmm. And this episode, I'm feeling sick, so are we also worried that I'm going to sound like too much of a man?
I'm still recovering as well. We're just ridiculous.
This is what happens when you have kids. Kids make you sick.
They do make you sick. That is true.
So this episode, we are going to be dedicating the time to the 4 camp of this argument, right? The argument for having child number 3, or I'm assuming more than one argument for child number 3.
I know. It does. I'm going to be honest and say it's been a weekend. And I have been struggling to put my pro list up, which on one hand, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's what this process unravels. It could also be, health related. Like, I just wasn't feeling well. So I was like, yeah, and now a baby.
And my thing, every time you said, I'm feeling sick, or I'm feeling tired, or, I have to go do this thing, I kept saying this entire weekend, oh yeah, well, imagine that with a little baby on your arm. Mm-hmm. And that was, that maybe made it worse for you. So I have a sneaky suspicion that this is going to be very hard for you, or me for that matter, to logic into.
I know.
Right. So that's actually why I wanted the 4 camp to go first, because this is the harder option.
I agree.
I think it's going to be harder for you to provide reasons that will logically make our lives better, that having a third baby will logically make our lives better than the reasons I have that a third baby would make our lives worse.
I hear you. Statistically, I would like to know, how many people do you think have a child? Well, let's put it this way: before they have their child, first child, second child, third child, fifth child, or whatever,
the next child,
before they have the next child, how many people do you think have as much conversation about it as we're having right now? Not obviously recording a podcast. That's us taking it to the extreme.
Because there'll be a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, this is me going totally counter to what I'm like fearful of doing, which is what I feel like the pattern, has been for us, which is, whoops, we've had a baby. I think I may be course correcting quite strongly.
So the pendulum has swung way too far in the other direction.
But I do wonder, do you think people do pros and cons lists and like in-depth weeks and weeks and weeks of conversations?
Well, when I talk to my friends who don't have kids, they have a very clear pros and cons list in their mind. So they have thought about it. when I speak to parents about, and especially dads, that they most of the kind of parents I speak to, about the next child, if they're thinking about it, considering it, there's never a time where they're like, oh, I haven't really thought about it. I think every parent maybe haven't verbalized it in the way that you and I have over the last forever time, but definitely have they have thought about it themselves quietly. I think you have to. I think it's impossible for you to.
Well, that's assuming choice, though, right? I mean,
no, but I'm saying the moment child 1, 2, or 3 arrives, the first thought that comes into your mind,
we're never doing this ever again.
Never doing this ever again.
Oh, I can't wait to do this again.
Exactly. Or what would it be like how would I cope with 2 or 3 or 4?
Fair enough.
And I think the moment you get settled into a rhythm, it's one of those things where when you get married, people go, when you start dating, when you're getting engaged, when you get engaged, when you get married, when you get married, it's when you're having a child.
Yeah.
And then when you have a child number 1, it's when it's child number 2 coming. It's the kind of thing that we tend to do to couples where we keep asking them those questions. But that also means that these couples have to ask themselves those questions. So I have a sneaky suspicion that maybe people haven't verbalized it as much as we have. Because man, we have spoken a lot about this over the last few months. But they definitely have thought about it.
True. I would be very interested in us putting a poll out there when this episode airs around, did you, before you chose to bring the next child in.
If you chose.
Yes, if you chose. Okay, first of all, how many of you did choose? Honestly, that would be really interesting to see if people are honest in their answers. And then for those who did choose, did you have a mild, like a mild to moderate amount of conversation, moderate to extensive, or could you write a thesis around why you decided to have, why you needed to have another child in your family?
And what
people say?
And the other question I'd love to ask is, how did you, if it was a process, if it was a discussion and a negotiation and a back and forth and a pros and cons list, how did you get to the point of saying, yes, let's do it? What was the thing that tipped you?
Yes.
That's what I would love.
Yes.
Because if we knew what that was...
I mean, we wouldn't need this whole podcast.
We wouldn't need this. This is what the podcast is trying to achieve.
You know what I'm hoping? I mean, we're going to have to ask some people. But what I'm hoping is like some of the couples that I really look up to that seem to have all their shiz together.
Yeah.
I'm hoping a few of them are like, no, we didn't. We clip-seed that one. Oops, that wasn't oops. That one wasn't oops. Like, we've got some like well-established couples who got married 10 to 15 years before us, who have like 4 children, thinking about a couple with 4 boys. I don't want to like out people on here, but there's like a few like couples that we really respect.
How about my mom?
Yes, your mom had 3. My mom had 3 biological children, and then obviously my brother came much later. But what I'm hoping, I'm just kind of secretly hoping that specifically the ones that are like, seem to have really got all their ducks in a row, that they were like, oh no, we drank too much wine one night and oops.
Yeah, we didn't quite get that condom thing quite working properly.
I mean, I don't think they're going to say it quite like that, Terence.
Well, some of our friends are quite frank.
That's true. But
not
anyway.
to mention name frank. So I mean, that would be great if we could put that out there. And we will. I think in the next couple of episodes, we should definitely get some of these people on, even speaking anonymously.
Totally, because it'll bust the myth that family planning, responsible family planning has to look a particular way.
Okay.
And it will validate my feelings
I was going to say.
around feeling like I have to be super responsible or I will be judged for this decision. I mean, look, either way, people will have an opinion and we're probably going to get judged, right? Probably in our own family.
And we weren't in control of number 2 arriving.
No.
So
and I felt judged by a few people.
It's interesting, and that this is a very clear like man-woman dynamic, because I felt a lot of like, hey, nice one.
And I felt like
you've done it. You've done
didn't
it by
you guys
mistake.
have a baby? Like, I mean, I wrote about it just the other day. Don't you have a TV? Don't you do this? Like, what were you like? It's effectively like I had to have transformed into this saintly like virginal mother Honestly, that's like, who just
who isn't married to this
who isn't
Adonis.
married. Exactly. But that is honestly the kind of like, where would I in my doted mothering, I mean, like, already ashamed that I'm a working mom, but in my doted motherhood.
Yeah, moms don't have sex.
No, exactly.
Moms
Where
to
would
babies
you even think
don't
about
have,
that?
No, of course not.
And so
You're too busy being a mom.
Exactly. And I did feel like, sure, guys, you didn't plan that well, I mean, it wasn't a huge, like, it wasn't like everyone was saying that. Of course, most people were really supportive. Our families were really supportive.
But there were comments.
But there were definitely comments.
Yeah.
And as I said in the post, I mean, I remember them. I remember feeling sheepish, like super embarrassed that we were going to be telling people that effectively you knocked me up.
You can't say it like that contextually.
But no, totally. Exactly. We were like married. I mean, I felt like even just picking up that 3rd or 4th pregnancy stick from the pharmacy, like I remember I remember the Rosemead Spa, for people in Cape Town who know that's like where we lived around the corner, like flashing my wedding ring, like putting the test on the table, like with my wedding ring very clearly like displayed, like I'm allowed to be doing this, because I had my own deep-seated shame around, I don't know what people would think of me. I think this is more a Julie issue than
I didn't want to say it.
No,
but it's 100%
totally,
a Julie issue.
Totally. Because I don't feel those things about other people.
No, but
yeah.
it's not that the judgment didn't exist. It's that you hold on to it and you're hyper aware.
I am
of it. So and it does affect you more than me, who I might be like, oh, that's a.
And I will care. I mean, I'm honest. I'm honest about, like, we're here to have an honest conversation.
Yeah.
If whatever tips the favor and we end up, going for number 3 and it happens, I almost am preempting the kinds of comments.
Well, this is partly
that we will get.
That's partly what this is about, right? Is for you to feel settled with whatever decision we've made, so that when someone asks you if the decision is yay or nay, if you do fall pregnant, you can say, oh no, it was thought through, it was thoughtful.
Yes, so planned.
And if it doesn't happen for whatever reason, either it's, oh, we planned to try and it didn't work out, or we decided not to. But we're wise and in control, and we didn't fall to our base instincts. It wasn't just because my husband's a hot that's not what happened.
This is clearly not a PG podcast.
I'll beep it out. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so
but you're right.
Yeah. So we do need to get to.
Can you see that I'm delaying?
You
on
are
the
delaying.
pros?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm just thinking all the pros.
And last episode, I made it very clear that like the pros was your responsibility. But in thinking about this episode, I'm like, wait a second, I'm not entirely, completely in the against camp.
Yes.
Like I can acknowledge that there are some pros.
Yeah, we're both kind of, to be honest, we're actually both somewhat in the middle, leaning slightly to one side or the other.
Yeah. We're centrists in this political system. And we can come and meet across the aisle.
I swear, we are a weird bunch. Okay, pro. So here's the thing. I was struggling. I was super, super struggling. I do apologize. Okay, our dog is probably going to be one of the con camps, because I don't know how she would deal with the baby. She's very attached to
we have to get rid of the dog, because then...
Terrence, no, I'm not having...
We can't swap the baby.
The SPCA people...
We can't swap the baby
coming for us.
We'd find a good home for her.
No. I also want to have all those TikToks with puppy and the baby. If I'm going to go through all this effort and go through the uncomfortable parts of pregnancy, I want to have some cute content that comes out. Okay. So here's the thing. Okay, I'm going to go through some logical pros.
Yes.
Okay, first of all.
Weirdly, I've got some non-logical, like emotional
So
pros.
that's the thing. That's almost what I'm jumping to first, to say that every time I'm like, this pro and that pro, and then there's a few things I see, and obviously I know that everything you see online is just a little glimpse, a little.
You don't see the
rice,
horror behind the camera.
A little grain of rice and a bag of rice, we don't see it. But I'm like, seeing those pregnancy test reaction videos for people who've waited, specifically for women who've struggled to conceive and then do, like, gets me every time. I'm like, that moment to find out that I'm that I'm pregnant and it not be a shock, like something that we actually want, that feels like a good high.
We are on very different TikToks because I never see any of those
that. Okay. Then like the whole, okay, first of all, yes, pregnancy is hard. I know this. I experienced it. B, it's not like I just tangentially am reminded about this. This is, I'm not going to get into it now, but this is part of my like daily work reality, is seeing all the dark, hard parts of birth and pregnancy.
And if you want to hear more about Julie's tough pregnancy, we spoke about it in the last episode.
Exactly. But it is also quite incredible. And even though my pregnancy was really hard at the end, the first bits, it wasn't, I know people who had horror stories, and of course I could be puking my guts out, but I didn't last time, and I actually did enjoy parts of it, and I would love to experience it again. So pregnancy would be something I would like to experience again, right? Okay, obviously not with having a child. It's not like I could become a surrogate if that was something that I wanted. If it was just like, there are people who really enjoy pregnancy, and I don't enjoy it that much, but I would like to experience it. There are parts of it that I missed, and I'd like to experience it again.
And also being pregnant and not have a 10-month-old on your
Absolutely. Hip. Obviously, I'd be doing homework with 2 children at school. It would be a different kind of stress, but there are different demands, and I would love to experience that with our children, because I think they would be quite amazed. I think they would love to come along to the sonograms, and they would enjoy that. Okay.
So let me jump in because
this is not your no camp yet.
It's not a no camp. This is me. I told you this week. This episode is about
positive,
the foresight. So a lot of the 4 thoughts that I have is really around moments, and I have this moment in my head of the boys speaking to the baby in your womb, talking to baby through your womb, lying on the bed next to you, talking to, future little
reading diary of a wimpy kid,
reading diary of a wimpy kid, or like telling the baby about what its parents are going to be like or whatever. There's that so from a pregnancy point of view, seeing the boys get excited for this process too, because they're at a really wonderful age where the world is still like wonderful, and they can respond to that wonder with awe, and like they're super excited by
and they're
things.
into it. They're still at that age. They're still young enough to be super connected to us physically. They love to snuggle with us. They love to hug. So they would not be like aloof teenagers, like, oh yeah, cool baby. I think they would really enjoy it.
They would get a kick out of the kick.
They would get a kick out of the nickname for the baby. They would get a kick out of seeing the baby as did on the ultrasounds, and I think that would be
they
special.
Would be the ones who would track how big the baby is.
Yes, baby's a peanut, baby's a grape. But I mean, they would, I think, absolutely. Oh, okay. Then again, so despite the fact that, again, I know all the hard parts of childbirth, I would like to experience it again. It's an incredibly transformative, powerful experience. I know.
Would you like to try and hit that natural target, or
hit that natural target? I would definitely. That would be my hope would be for an unmedicated, or at least an quote unquote natural childbirth, as we colloquially call it. Obviously not saying that C-sections are unnatural, but I would like to go through that experience.
An intervention, a
low intervention birth. Yeah,
I don't know what the correct terms are. This is your job.
Yes.
I do want to say we have actually jumped over a massive 4 because we went straight to the pregnancy.
Yeah,
but there's a.
Terrence, again on the PG part.
No, but
yes,
but that
no, absolutely.
That is also when you are trying. I can imagine it gets to the point where you're like, okay, can we just? It stops. And maybe and I don't know. Maybe it loses appeal. It hasn't happened to me yet, and if it ever gets to the point where it does, I'll be well impressed.
No, I mean, I think obviously noting the privilege that we have and the fact that we didn't have to try for Eli, and I think it is a very different experience, just based on everything that I've heard from people close to us for whom fertility challenges have been real. I think that is a different experience of it, but I think for people for whom it didn't take that long, it is an exciting thing to be able to push the button on starting,
so to speak.
Starting the. Oh my gosh, I cannot take you seriously. We're supposed to be mature enough to have a third child, and you're giggling at making like innuendos. Okay.
But anyway, moving on.
Yes,
I just want to say that is a big pro.
It is. I mean, that's not the only reason for that, but
no,
yes,
it's not the only reason.
It is fun.
It's a nice excuse. It's a nice fallout of the
I got you. Okay. The third, so obviously pregnancy, the birth experience, going through that again. I know it sounds like a strange thing, but I also know there are other women who also really enjoyed their pregnancies and birth. And so it's not strange to everyone. So if you're hearing this, rolling your eyes, I'm not minimizing the hardships of it, but I also think it can be incredibly empowering. And I've witnessed that with my own eyes too. Okay. And then I think there is nothing, I don't know how to get around this in any other way except to say that babies are great. I love babies. And for people who know me personally, this is not surprising.
Yeah.
We cared for babies before we adopted Liam. I have been drawn to babies my entire life. And I feel like quite like I mother in the baby stage really well. It comes very naturally to me.
You do. That is true.
I don't mean that. It's not something I'd say out of the context of this conversation because it sounds like like a flex. I'm not trying to. I'm just in like.
Julie, no one thinks I'm really good at parenting babies is a flex. I'm sorry. It's like
You're so rude.
I don't want to brag, but
I'm known as the baby whisperer.
I change nappies like no one's business.
I do. I can. I can. I got some mad baby skills.
So braggadocious.
I really enjoy that stage. It's not, even though it was hard for both of our kids for different reasons, it's not a stage that, there are some parents who are like, if they could just be given their child when they're older, okay, sure, but I have a different memory of some of the other parts of them being little that you did enjoy. You can't say the bad stuff on this episode. That's the next one.
Yeah.
And it was good. And I'm not one of those people who wishes, even to I don't want to rush that away. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so something that I've noticed about both parts that you've brought up is that they're very you-centric. So both of them are like, I want to feel, and it doesn't mean that those are not valid.
Getting to the part where the child actually joins our family. It's just that the pregnancy and birth primarily can't really happen without me.
Sure, but can you understand that I wouldn't put that onto a for list for us.
Sure.
So the only way I'd put that on the for list is that it would make you happy.
Okay.
So that's not so
this list is very technical.
Happy mom, happy Julie, that's on the for list. Definitely.
Okay. Then you've seen our children with small humans. They're really good with them.
In short bursts.
True, in short bursts, because it's not their small human. But we've seen our other friends who sort of went for the bigger age gap. And these are people who have similar parenting ethos to us, where you kind of, you foster the sense of a team, a kindness, and our family, we look out for each other and we care for each other. And I have seen, and I think it's the fine line of not having that be too much of a burden of care. I mean, all those parents who've got those age gaps that we know, they do such a great job of making sure that their kids aren't lumped with, they still get to be kids, but their older siblings thrive and seem to genuinely adore their baby sisters or brothers or whatever it is. And I think our boys would be like that too. I think that they would be amazing big brothers to your little sibling. And I don't think it would be a lot of convincing. I mean, first of all, our youngest, as I said, for many reasons, but not all are pure of heart, but no, he just doesn't want to be. But he would be thrilled.
Yes. He in fact, in the last few months has probably asked me to get a baby sister
Mm-hmm.
going in the family more than you have.
Yes.
He's been pushing that agenda harder.
He has been the main champion of the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which you have not fought too hard against, but
No,
he would be very excited for it. And I agree with you. I think there would be,
And even I think our eldest would come on board in a very, very, I don't think it would be a push for him.
no, it wouldn't be
He
a push.
just expresses it differently.
And it would be a good growth and learning opportunity for them. Another 4 that I have when the baby arrives is that baby weight. You know, when you're carrying like holding a baby.
Oh,
It's just, babies are just the right weight
yeah.
in a way that the boys now aren't quite. It's a little bit more laborious putting them on my shoulder.
And they smell so good.
And they smell so good. That was another thing, is that baby smell is really good. And having a baby in the bed next to you for a cuddle or all those kind of moments are very nice. I agree with you. There are a lot of wonderful moments and periods with a baby in the house. Next episode I'll talk about
the other side of that.
The other side of that.
When they're in the bed too long.
Yes. So there is that. Okay, so do you have any other?
Yes.
Oh, you have more.
No, I was going to say, I think this concept of family, I know that, you know, the sort of, I guess, the politically popular conversation around families is, you know, keep them small. The climate is in crisis. We're in economic crisis. There's, you know, I know that your cons list is going to be plentiful. And I respect people's decisions on that. I would consider us to have a really good marriage and to have a really healthy family dynamic. It's not perfect. And it's hard, and we are not perfect parents at all. I like disclaimer.
Speak to yourself.
I mean, we really aren't.
We really aren't.
But we are. But I also don't want to sell us short, because we've worked really hard.
Yeah, we put a lot of effort.
And we continue to put a lot of effort because we really value our family. And in a dynamic like that, I think that I don't think expansion of that is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a different conversation where you hear, you know, have a baby, it'll fix a broken marriage, you know, which I think, I'm not saying people go into a decision like that, but you have heard those stories where it's like, you know, a baby will fix something, you know, where there's something missing and a baby will fix it. I actually don't think that, despite the fact that I have this picture of this one extra, I can almost see the interactions with this extra person. I can. Around the dinner table, I can see her. Probably will be a boy, but I can see her or him at the little high chair at the dinner table, going for the salt and shaker, you know, and throwing their peas across the table. But I can see that. But we're not missing anything. We're not broken. This is not about trying to fix our marriage.
There's not a hole that we feel we're going to be trying to fill that a baby would fill.
No.
And it's not a toxic space where we feel like a baby would distract us from the problems or the cuteness or whatever.
Right.
Those aren't that's not part of our decision making.
Right. So in that dynamic, I think extra family could be a great thing. Let's put it like that. An extra family member in the context of a thriving relation, like a thriving marriage, and
you're making the circle bigger.
I don't think that it's felt the same way. Again, because this is such a sensitive conversation, I feel like I've got to just like put disclaimers everywhere. I'm not saying that other families can't, like, I'm not saying that if you had a child and your marriage wasn't the best, that it means that that's like a broken family.
No,
I'm really not saying that. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
I feel like this is gonna.
I think the disclaimer that we always put on is that this is actually a very deeply personal conversation that we're having.
Yes.
And the examples that we're giving are very specific to our family.
Yeah.
So the reasons that we're giving now, the reasons for, are very specific to our family, and it's not something that we would use as a metric to judge other families.
Yes. when people talk about this, the concept of having another child, sometimes it's like this would be the straw that breaks the camel's back. You know, like why break you got a good thing, you have another baby, it'll mess that dynamic up. Whereas I don't
wait until the next episode.
Yeah, but whereas I don't think that's the case, because I think we've got really solid foundation that instead of having the broken camel's back scenario, we've got the extension of the circle. The circle is bigger. The circle it looks different, but it's got this whole other person who is fully supported and loved.
And also adds to it.
And adds.
In their own way.
Exactly. So yeah, I think, and I think that's huge. I think that's really, because that's the dynamic I'm seeing our family, and I'm seeing, as I said, this. I'm very happy with the circle being the size that it is. But I, could we have a better circle? Could it be a better circle? And what do we do about the kind of, is there someone missing from our table? Like.
Well, we have, for our kitchen counter, we have three high chairs.
We have 3 high chairs where the boys sit. There's always one in the middle that's empty. And I wish that I didn't feel like that. Like I really am envious. I'm envious of the people who are like, nope, 2 and done, you know, kitchen's closed, whatever it is, you know, like with certainty. And so many of my friends, they are like, oh my God, they can't think of anything worse. They are ready. They are first in the queue for the vasectomy. The IUD is in, never again to be repeated. They're happy. And I wish I had that contentment, because it would be really convenient.
It would be so convenient. It would make our lives so much better.
I know.
We wouldn't have to have this whole podcast.
I know.
If that was the case.
But I don't.
But you don't. And that's fair. You know, we can't, and this is a big part of the last 2 years of discussion about this, the back and forth and the arguments was really about me coming to terms with this feeling that you have actually being a legitimate feeling. Like me understanding that it's not a slight on our family. No. It's not a slight on me as a husband or a father, because there is a thing about, you know, being a man in this society and having to provide for your family, and if someone is feeling like they're lacking, that you have to step up and do the thing. But when you feel like that's not the right choice, there's this tension that gets created.
Absolutely. And there's that tension of the narrative of you or the boys feeling like they're not enough. Like, are we not enough for mom?
Yeah.
You know? And it's not that. It's like I can't articulate it, because I would hate that to be the takeaway. I would hate if our kids, God forbid, if they get hold of this, you know, listen further down the line, they were like, you know, we've chosen not to. That they're like, mom's sitting with this thing of like, we weren't enough for her. And that's like the weird thing that doesn't make sense to my brain, that's seeking logic, is how can you be both so grateful for this marriage we have, for these 2 wonderful children we have, and yet also want this other thing? And does it make me a discontent, ungrateful person to have these feelings? I
don't have the answer.
Well, what help are you?
Well, if I was any help, we wouldn't have this podcast. I think that's a good time for us to take a pause and start thinking and prepping for the Against episode, which will be next, because I feel like we're going to be you're leading me into a place where it's going to be very easy.
Did you get all your pros out on the table though? I just want to double check that you're not holding anything back. I don't like the fact that we're going to hold up out a board after this with the pros and cons.
The pros are going to be very short, very, very short. I
mean, can you see it? Can you see it?
Yeah, but I can see lots of things. So this is also the problem, right? It's that you and I have completely different ways of thinking and imagining our futures and imagining what's possible. I can totally see myself being an astrophysicist. I can totally see myself being a professor doing astrophysics lectures in my 70s. I know it's not going to happen, but I can totally see that. So can I imagine what life would be like with a third child in the good version of that, with, you know, the autumn sunshine coming through our house and the baby gurgling while you know, bopping the baby and I'm cooking and whatever, and the boys are running and bringing flowers to you and whatever. Yes, I can totally imagine that. I can totally imagine that happening.
I think you imagine that better than I do.
Yeah, but I can also imagine, but again, because I'm so imaginative, I can also imagine the complete other side of it. And I feel like I have a lot more in my, on the scale of the other side of that imagination. And that's what's the scary thing for me, which again we'll talk about in the Against episode. So I feel like all of the pros that you spoke about, I 100% agree with. You know, just the experience, the pros really are about all the good parts of having a baby,
or having a child, because the baby grows up, right?
Yeah, having a child, of adding a person to a family. There are so many good parts, and everything you've listed today all have an other side of the coin. And I think that's the danger of this, is that everything you've mentioned, I could say, well, what if it goes wrong? Pregnancy, yes, if it goes great, if you have a good time, if you don't get too sick, brilliant, best thing ever. Best, like, I'm not being facetious, literally best thing ever for you. But we've experienced when it does go wrong. We know people for whom it has gone wrong in all sorts of ways. You know, the baby in the bed being all like gurgly and happy and charming and smelling amazing. Well, sometimes the baby screams for 2 years solidly. We experience that. People have experienced that and worse. You know, there's all sorts of things that I could, again, this is why.
You're ruining my point. You're supposed to just bring up the sweet things for you.
but again, yeah, I've started to err into the side of the against, which is why I think it's time for us to end the podcast. There are a lot of pros. I still think that the cons will massively outweigh the pros. And that is why I think this is one of those things where logic and reason cannot be the primary determinants. Oh, there goes my phone. Logic and reason cannot be the primary determinants of the decision. And that is where we are so uncomfortable, because you and I are both very logical, reasonable people who don't like making emotional decisions. And this is an emotional decision. Help us. Thanks for listening.
That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for listening in.
As always, this is our story, so everything applies to us, but might not apply to you. And in fact, we would love to hear about the things that do apply to you and about your story. So tell us about how you came to the decision to have your next child, or whether or not you're grappling with this issue yourself. Send us your thoughts to aphrodaddyct@gmail.com.
Or get hold of us on Instagram, or the gram, like the cool people call it.